Throughout the various parts of the Shadowrun 4e series, I came up with wild ideas based on the rules present. Because if there's one thing I love about tabletop role-playing games, it's finding ridiculous things you can do with the rules as written. And this exercise demonstrates why it's important to be willing to revisit and reread your rulebook from time to time. Because I originally had a plan to calculate how readily you could destroy a wall with a machine gun. Well, turns out that Shadowrun has a section about destroying barriers with weaponry, and it simplifies a lot of the calculations I would have been doing on my own. Learning tabletop role-playing games is always a gradual process. These are several hundred-page long manuals after all. Get the important stuff like character creation and how to use the dice first, then come back after you ran a game or two to find the neat but more niche rules. Anyways, on with my findings. Let's talk about shooting down a wall with a machine gun. Attacks against barriers, walls, and other things in your way can only fail if you critical glitch. Your role is just to figure out how much extra damage you're going to do. Your damage value is also modified by the weapon you're using, per the chart on page 166 in the 20th Anniversary Edition. The barrier still gets to roll double its armor rating against your damage value, unless it's against an indirect attack spell or an explosive placed directly against it. Those only get the standard armor rating of the barrier. And after doing a little bit of browsing around for information about how skyscrapers and other buildings are constructed, I came up with some plausible enough understanding of different sorts of materials used and what we would need to use the stats thereof. I'm going to assume average material, since even though drywall and plaster are common for interior walls, they're usually hung across a wooden frame. This is at least the standard for most walls in an office building. You will have the occasional brick wall included as a physical firewall, and a few steel or reinforced concrete support pillars if it's a skyscraper or other tall building like a warehouse. This, incidentally, is also some of the legwork that your character can do. By physically looking at the building, perhaps posing as a building inspector, or just reading up on some of the local building codes to see what a building should be made of, and also seeing if the building the Shadowrunners are trying to break into is compliant with those codes. But I digress. Average material has an armor of 4 and a structure of 5. The damage table for a firearm is 2 damage per 1 bullet fired into the wall. This is where a full auto weapon would be more effective than a single shot, since if we assume a dice pool of 12, 6 firearms and 6 agility, the most we can get is 14 damage using a single shot. But given that it's 5 and 6 that grants us hits, we'd have to be incredibly lucky to get that kind of return. Flip the switch, set the firing mode to full auto, and go nuts. 10 bullets gives 20 damage right there, at the cost of 9 dice from our pool, which could reduce it to 3 if we're sitting at 12. But, so long as we don't glitch, that wall is going to take at least 12 damage. This also assumes that the GM rolls for the armor rating of the wall to reduce the damage, and gets a perfect roll as well. This is one of the few cases, for the sake of simplicity though, you might want to simply go with the rule for buying hits. 4 dice makes 1 hit, so if the GM does this for an average material wall, it would reduce our 20 damage to 18. 3 times the structure rating of that wall. Which, for every full iteration of structure you do, you create a square meter-sized hole, which is far more than enough for even a troll to squeeze into.